Hi everyone, thanks for visiting this webinar. This is applying for the IRDL program, Perspectives from the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association's members. So we'll be talking about the application process, some of our experiences, and give you some tips. And hopefully this will encourage you to apply for the program because it is a great opportunity to learn from peers, have this research background to develop your projects and really become effective research librarians in your areas. So again, for those who are just joining for the first time, special thanks to the APALA president, Lessa, for being instrumental and supportive for this webinar. Of course, there's also the ALA Atlas, the Office of Diversity program to support this effort as well. And if you didn't know, we do have an organization called APALA, as I mentioned. It is a nonprofit ethnic caucus group under ALA. And please consider joining. This is some of the activities we do, and we encourage and support one another through these kinds of professional development. It's a great opportunity, and we have lots of stuff going on throughout the year. So here are just some introductions. My name is Raymond Pun. I'm at Fresno State. I am the first year student success librarian, and I was also a participant of the IRDL program in 2016, this last program. And so I will be speaking on my experiences as well. Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Masunaga. I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Loyola Marymount University. Loyola Marymount is the university that hosts IRDL, and I was on the advisory committee for IRDL for the past 3 years. And I'll just be talking about the history of IRDL and the application process.
And hi, I'm Frans Albarillo. I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Brooklyn College at the City University of New York. I was at the first cohort of IRDL back in 2014, and I'll be talking about my application process and my experiences that first year.
Thank you. So today we'll be talking about the history, the assessment, and how IRDL this time is changing. It just opened up in December 1st, a couple of weeks ago, or actually last week, and you might want to look into the application process, and then we'll share some of our perspectives.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the background in IRDL. So the Institute for Research Design and Librarianship, it started as an idea proposed by Marie Kennedy to the Dean of LMU Library, Chris Brangolini. Marie is our electronic resources librarian. Marie was inspired to create IRDL by a series of NSF-funded workshops in the anthropology field. They were called short courses in research methods. So IRDL was kind of based off that previous model that's worked very well for the anthropology field. IRDL's goal is to increase the number of academic librarians with specific skills in conducting and disseminating the results of research. And at the center of IRDL is a 7-day institute that's held at Loyola Marymount, where experienced social science researchers teach the fundamentals of research design. IRDL also provides ongoing support to researchers through a really awesome social media community. IRDL is currently in its second round of grant funding and has run for 3 years. In the first 3 years, we've hosted 68 scholars from 51 universities, 4 college libraries, 3 research institutions, 2 community colleges from 29 different states. The citation you see right here is a publication that Marie and Chris did. They conducted a national survey and asked academic librarians about their research experience, their research confidence, and the perceived barriers to conducting research. And the results from this initial research helped to develop IRDL. I really recommend that you take a look at this article if you have the time and are very interested to see where Marie and Chris were coming from when they developed IRDL. The biggest barriers to research are a lack of experience, time, and a lack of personal or institutional support. And to work through this, IRDL has built around providing both the experience and providing a network of like-minded researchers to learn from each other and to grow together. And basically, IRDL is funded through many different partners, including Loyola Marymount, San Jose State, SCELC, and of course right here it's an MLIS grant. We've been grant funded twice. So the first year was a 3-year grant, and we just got a second grant to do another additional 3 years. And at the center of IRDL is the summer workshop. So let me talk a little bit about that. The workshop is led by 2 main instructors. The lead instructor is a social scientist who specializes in conducting focused research design courses. And then the co-instructor is someone from San Jose State, who's a library school faculty member who teaches research methods, but focused on the library field. And in the workshop, for the 7-day workshop, there are hands-on exercises, targeted writing sessions, and a little bit of fun, I would say. I mean, Frans and Ray are going to talk about their experience, but they also try to add in some fun bonding things in IRDL, so it's not just all work and play. And then after you're done with the 7-day workshop, upon return, each scholar during this new cycle will be paired with a mentor. And the mentor will be meeting with the person on a regular schedule, likely on the phone, by email, whatever works best for the individuals. And this mentor will help guide them throughout the coming year as they focus on the research project that they started at IRDL. And I think maybe someone was going to take over after this. Well, anyways, just so quickly, the goals of IRDL is to improve research, quality of librarian research, increase the number of academic librarians with specific research skills. I'm sorry, you're going to say something, Ray?
Yeah, I was just going to say to exactly what you described and what you see in the screen here, but also I think it's important to learn that our library science training may not have been adequate or sufficient to prepare us for research projects in qualitative and quantitative methods. So part of IRDL is really to empower you to take on these new methods that are obviously very social science based, but to prepare for these kinds of projects that would support your institution and the profession.
Right. Oh, and then just so you know that there is actually an assessment plan for IRDL. Basically, Chris and Marie have developed a multi-phase assessment plan to determine if IRDL is working. And in the past, they've done pre and post-institute surveys, a mid-year check-in, and a 1-year post-IRDL survey. In this next round, I'm sure it's going to slightly change a little bit. But overall, if you are accepted as a scholar to IRDL, you're integrally involved with the assessment process. So everything in IRDL is paid for if you're accepted. So the room and board, the airfare, food on campus, and that workshop itself. Really participating in the assessment portion is kind of like your fee for attending IRDL. It kind of binds you together with Marie and Chris, and you together make IRDL happen, and you make it better for the next cohort. And I should also say that there's also Sage Publishing is a sponsor of IRDL, so there are other people that are involved, and I forgot to mention that, but they're also part of developing the curriculum. So when you assess the curriculum, it kind of evolves based on the feedback that you give to IRDL at the end. And just so we could, you know that this was the second round of funding, so IRDL is going to be changing beginning in 2017. It used to be that IRDL was 9 days long, but we've changed it to a 1-week-long, 7-day experience, and that's mostly because 9 days is a lot for people to take time off from work, and they acknowledge that. So it's going to be a shorter workshop, but with still the same amount of work as before. And I mentioned this previously, there will be a former mentor that will be attached to you once you leave IRDL. And I believe a lot of the mentors are former IRDL participants.
So Jen, I could say something on the next few slides. This is Ray, by the way. as Jen mentioned, it's now for the new IRDL program, it's just 1 week. So arrive June 3rd and June 11th. So as long as you have those dates confirmed for yourself when you are preparing an application process, that's really good to know because at least you have those earmarked for this program. And it can be quite intensive for 2 years experience, for 2 weeks experience that was pretty thorough, but I think 1 week can just be as intensive. And so just keep that in mind, June 3rd to June 11th. It's a huge commitment just for even 1 week. And the application process, as we mentioned, it is just ready, opened in last week. Look at the website. Basically, you need a cover letter and then about your project, and then an 8-page proposal, more or less. And there are guidelines in the website for you to look into. And also you want to provide your resume and or CV. That's also instrumental to identify whether you have done or you are a good candidate for doing research if you're interested in that. And also, most importantly, getting a letter from your library director or dean. That is also part of the requirement. So I just gave you just sort of a 4-part quick snapshot of what is required, but please check the website for more information because it is a lot thorough than what I've just described. So here's the eligibility part, just things you want to just think about before you apply. If you just graduated recently, great, you are eligible, but if you are graduating pretty soon, that might be something you want to think about for this program later. I think from my experience and my understanding, the purpose behind people who have graduated much preferences for much earlier is because it's been a while that they've done or have taken a class in research methods. So this kind of continuing education can be really helpful for those who graduated library school maybe 5 or 6 years ago, like myself. And what's important is that you have to be employed in a single full-time permanent position at an academic or research librarian role in the US. So I think most of the, if not all of the candidates or the scholars are actually academic librarians. I think there might be some exceptions, but for the most part, it's better to have that kind of capacity because then you have support from your institution to be doing a project that could take a year long. And persons in residency programs or time-limited positions are not eligible for IRDL because I think your status is going to be changing throughout the process. So it's better to have a more consistent employment for this opportunity. And of course, applicants must be able to attend, as I said, June 3rd to June 11th. That is a really good period, and they've already identified for all of the prospects. So just keep that in mind. And when to apply, as I said, December 1st, and it closes on January 13th. So again, the whole purpose of this webinar is to inform you what IRDL is and to encourage you to apply based from our experiences and what we can tell you about the process. So any tips for applying? I will just share one thing. Again, this is mostly a social science research methods based program. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't apply if you are a humanist or if you are into science research. However, it does have that kind of component where it teaches you LIS discipline in the social sciences. So your topic and your research question should address at least some social research methods or having that component in it. And then thinking about your scope, it's also important because the project can be really, really overwhelming and really interesting, but at the same time, you want to scale it down to something that's doable within a year. It may be conducted at your home institution, but it should also have a broader implication. So try not to select any project that is very specific to your work environment that might not be applicable to other settings. So a lot of people I've heard from my experiences in the IRDL have applied the program doing research in international students or instruction or I believe what's another big one, or diversity matters. So those are some of the topics that I remember seeing them. And for anyone who is curious, please be sure to look at the IRDL website. The blog tab has a lot of profiles from the previous scholars, and then some of them do indicate what projects they've worked on. And if you look at the publications tab, I believe it's around there as well. it'll tell you what are some of the scholars, what they've published since they participated in the program. And a couple other things, if you're actively job seeking, do not apply for this institute experience. Your success in completing your research project depends on a stable work environment for 1 academic year after completing the summer workshop. This is why we don't accept anyone in a time-limited position or residency. So just keep that in mind. If you are job hunting, maybe you want to think about the year after or the year after that. This program is funded for a couple of more years. Am I correct, Jen?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
I
for
believe
3 years. We
Okay.
are just starting our 3 years, so 3 whole years to go. And we
So
are
this is another focus.
also looking at ways to make this sustainable. They're always looking for new partners and new ways to fund it. So I don't imagine it disappearing after 3 years, but it's always nice to say that we have funding for those, for the solid 3
Yep.
years.
So whatever we're explaining is going to be helpful for this round, the next round, if you're thinking about it. Just if you don't have enough time within that 1 month to think of a project, put your proposal together, you might want to just give yourself another year before you apply. Because most importantly, your research should be completed within 1 year. If your research question is bigger than 1 year, consider how to propose to do a component of it during IRDL year. So a lot of people have also thought about collaborating with other librarians on their projects when they apply for IRDL, for instance. That's great. I believe you and your collaborators should apply independently. It's not a team or a joint effort. This is a individual project. However, it is recommended that you look into this website for more information. Frans and Jen, are there any other tips you want to mention?
Yeah, I just like to say, at least from my experience and people who've asked me about applying, I think that when you're crafting the project you're planning to propose is make sure, to sort of talk to people in your institution about it and figure out really if it's doable. So you want to talk to the institutional gatekeepers, for example, if you need to access an email listserv or, how people do research on students on campus to see, what processes and who needs approval to do what in terms of, studying um, students as human subjects. And then also I would, another tip is just to ask your colleagues to review your application. Another set of eyeballs could, really help. And especially since you need to get the letter of your dean, I would ask your dean to review your application so that they know exactly uh, what you're doing. Um, that would be some of the tips that I would have for people who are applying.
Great,
Um,
Frans. Jen, do you have anything?
Yes, since I did read applications as my role in the advisory committee, everyone's Friends and Ray already pretty much covered everything, but the couple more that I noticed. First is please proofread. There are sometimes typos in applications, and everyone knows that's just like applying for a job. You just want to make sure you put the best foot forward, and you should have a nice professional cover letter. The IRDL website will outline how we want the application to look. There are several different components, including a literature review, methodology or proposed methodology, and I really encourage you to stick with that format because that's what we expect to see when we get an application. And when it particularly regards to the literature review, it is nice if you take the time to really do a thorough lit review. I'm not saying make it 3 pages, but please be sure to at least look at the last 5 years of research that is around your topic of interest, because when we see a small lit review, it's kind of discouraging because we like to know that you actually have thought about this and you've seen where your research would fit in the whole research cycle, and that you thought a lot about what has gone before you and how you can improve or develop your idea. And I think that's it. Oh, yes, one more thing. So there is also a letter of recommendation that is necessary. I do recommend, if you can, try to give at least an outline or your rough draft of your application to your dean, or just so they can know what you're proposing and they can develop a better letter of recommendation. I think that's kind of sounds a little bit like obvious, but it does help if your dean or your director knows exactly what you're doing and can really speak to the level of development that you've put into this research project and could write the best letter possible, because we do put a lot of emphasis on reading that letter and making sure that you do have some institutional support. It doesn't make or break an application, but it's nice to have that. And now I think I'm done.
Thanks. So one other thing is about institutional support. You have to think about this might be helpful for those who are considering this program. The the types of programs that are already existing in your school. So for instance, do you already have access to SPSS, NVivo, Atlas TI, etc.? All of these software for qualitative, quantitative research methods. And if it's available already, just make sure you put that in your application that you have interest in applying your data into these programs. Not all institutions will have them, unfortunately. They are expensive. However, it's just something for you to keep in mind that you have to think about what's already available and how do you complete your IRDL program using what you have available. So leveraging your assets in your current workplace. So if you have any questions, of course, just wanted to say you should check the website. Marie and Christine are very, very responsive and receptive. Feel free to email them. They are the, I guess, the co-directors, co-principal investigators of IRDL, and they can give you more information. So a couple of thanks to those people who created the slides. We really also like to thank Marie, actually, for being encouraging support and spirit for this webinar, and also letting us borrow the slides. A lot of it is content she developed, so we're just being really good ambassadors. Frans?
Okay, thanks, Ray. I'll talk a little bit about my first year experience since I was in the first cohort. And it was in 2014. We had a 9-day research camp, and it was pretty intense. I like to describe the experience as like coming back to graduate school. So we've already talked about, having the proposal and things like that. But one thing that was unique about being in the first year was I did not know what to expect. And, the Marie and Chris, who ran IRDL, had a curriculum, but yeah, it was, I thought it was pretty intense. Um, so I prepared my application, which was actually based on a grant that I had submitted earlier, and I had gotten help, sort of putting that application together from colleagues within my own department. I'd also asked them to read what I was proposing, and also, just sort of check the grammar and things like that.